Order, I call the Assistant Defence Minister and the Honourable Member for Fadden.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. On the 24th of June last year, I joined the Prime Minister, the Leader of the Opposition and the Minister for Defence to honour a fallen Commando, Corporal Cameron Baird, then MG, now VC MG, who was tragically killed 2 days earlier whilst fighting with the Special Operations Task Group in Afghanistan. He was then the 20th member of the Special Operations Task Group to fall in combat, an example of the price paid by some of our elite soldiers, a disproportionate price, half of the combat deaths being paid by our SF elements. And of those 20 souls that had fallen in Special Forces, 10 were patrol commanders. 10. Half of our Special Forces killed in action were the men who commanded from the front. Such was Corporal Baird, MG then, Corporal Baird, VC, MG now. 2 days before I gave that speech, on the 22nd of June, Corporal Baird led his men into battle as a patrol commander. He would lose his life in extraordinary close combat with a highly trained and determined enemy. He repeatedly drew fire away from team members and charged enemy fire 5 times through a building. His actions enabled the enemy to be neutralised. His team survived. The mission successful. He was awarded the Victoria Cross in recognition of exceptional and conspicuous act of valour, extreme devotion to duty and ultimately self-sacrifice. The Victoria Cross for valour is appropriate in this regard. To charge a door where you know there is a sustained enemy force behind that is resisting every element, to charge once, it's bloody gutsy. To charge it twice is a serious act of courage and leadership at a command level. To keep going back, in this case 5 times, until the enemy is done with, is nothing short of extraordinary. I said on the 24th of June 2013, an analogy from the Spartans. Herodotus tells us the Spartans never asked how many of the enemy there were. They simply asked where they were. And I said it then and I reflect upon it now. Corporal Baird didn't know how many enemy he faced that night. The fire was sustained, it was direct, it was accurate. The enemy was courageous, resilient, was not prepared to give in. He didn't know how many. All he knew was where they were. And that's where he went. And that, Mr Deputy Speaker, is frankly the stuff of legend. Highly deserving of the Victoria Cross. And it's to that I pay tribute to this extraordinary man. I acknowledge his father Doug, his mother Kay and his brother Brendan Baird. They have lost a son, they have lost a brother. They have lost him in extraordinary circumstances, but they have lost him still. To that we share their grief, at the same time acknowledging his heroism. The Baird family said they're extremely proud of Cameron. They were honoured to accept the VC on his behalf, and they were grateful to the Governor-General and the ADF for bestowing this honour upon Cameron. Gracious words from a grieving family, honouring a lost son. Cameron joined the Army in January 2000. He served for 13 years. Oddly enough, he discharged in 2004 and rejoined again in 2006. Both periods assigned to the 4th Battalion, now the 2nd Commando Regiment. His operational service included Op Tanaga, Falconer, Bastille and 5 tours on Operation Slipper. Previously awarded, of course, the Medal of Gallantry as a Lance Corporal for his actions during close combat in Afghanistan in November 2007. Then leading his team forward under heavy fire to recover a wounded comrade. Many acts of bravery occur in battlefields. The interesting thing about Corporal Baird is he knew what faced him. He had faced fire many times. He had led his team forward In previous extraordinary circumstances in November 2007, he knew what fire sounded like. He knew the crack thump of incoming rounds. And yet on that fateful day, the 22nd of June, he went forward again. An extraordinary, extraordinary act. In acknowledging Corporal Baird's gallantry and his sacrifice that took his life, let me also acknowledge the men and women of the 2nd Commando Regiment. Their list of battle honours, in terms of the men and women that have won both individual honour and, of course, the Shawwali Cot Battle Honour for the regiment, speaks volumes of their training, of their tenacity and of their courage. We are lucky in our ADF to have had such fine men and women service. I'm especially pleased to see Joel Fitzgibbon, the member for Hunter, a former Defence Minister in this place, here to speak on this as well. And I welcome his comments and I welcome his commitment. He was a Defence Minister whilst we were at war, and that brings with it a special responsibility and something that I know bears heavily on his shoulders and that he took seriously when he was Defence Minister at the time. 100th VC that we have given out in our nation, an award given rarely, because rarely do we find such enormous acts of heroism that are found worthy of such an honour. Well, Corporal Cameron Stewart Baird, MG, VC, is deserving of that. He has paid an extraordinary price for an extraordinary act of gallantry, both for nation and for mates and for units. It is a proud day that I, as Assistant Minister for Defence, can actually speak in this place to acknowledge such a great Australian. I know the nation is proud of him, this parliament's proud of him, and the government's proud of him.